A detailed press conference by India to expose Pakistan's ways and what really happened last night. A couple of aspects that I'd like to focus on here. One, the fact that Pakistan and India has exposed this, of how Pakistan has used civilian aircraft almost as a shield to ensure the IF doesn't hit out at the drones. And so we had to exercise maximum restraint, and also the use of Turkish drones. We're going to be talking about that. Just take a look first at some of the highlights of that briefing.
On the intervening night of 8th-9th May 2025, Pakistan military carried out multiple violations of Indian airspace along the entire western border with an intent to target military infrastructure. Pakistan military also resorted to firing of heavy caliber weapons along the line of control. Along the international border and line of control, drone intrusions were attempted from Leh to Sir Creek at 36 locations with approximately 300 to 400 drones. Indian Armed Forces brought down a number of these drones using kinetic and non-kinetic means. Pakistan's irresponsible behavior again came to fore. Pakistan did not close its civil airspace despite it launching a failed unprovoked drone and missile attack on 7th May at 8:30 hours in the evening. Pakistan is using civil airliners as a shield, knowing fully well that its attack on India would elicit a swift air defense response. This is not safe for the unsuspecting civil airliners, including the international flights, which were flying near IB between India and Pakistan. Pakistan also carried out artillery shelling across the line of control using heavy caliber artillery guns and armed drones at Tangdhar, Uri, Poonch, Mendhar, Rajouri, Akhnur and Udhampur in Jammu and Kashmir area, which resulted in some losses and injuries to Indian Army personnel. Pakistan Army also suffered major losses in Indian retaliatory fire.
So let's just talk about that one aspect. Gaurav is with me. We've got senior journalist Sandeep Unithan also with us here in our studios. But just putting the focus really, Gaurav, on the fact that, India spoke about a civilian aircraft being used as a shield. How exactly did that happen? What happened last night?
So what happened was Pakistan targeted multiple locations in India. India fired countermeasures, but India could not take the kind of retaliatory action India could have because Pakistan has not closed its airspace for civilian flights. So this flight, an Airbus A320 flying from Dammam to Lahore, was flying with passengers in. So India exercised restraint. Had India fired a longer range missile, that civilian aircraft could have been in the line of fire and civilians could have been killed. So Pakistan, as always, uses civilians as a shield. And in this case, it's risking lives of civilian passengers as it sends in drones and aerial, projectiles into our country.
You contrast that, Sandeep, with India. Of course, we've closed off largely all airports in the north and west, keeping in mind this particular threat. You contrast that to Pakistan. So we understand that they timed the aircraft in such a manner to their strikes, essentially. And what this does is, I understand we can't fire back into Pakistani soil. We managed to intercept, but that's it.
Absolutely, Akshita. And that's what the game plan appears to be, that they, exactly like they say, how guerrillas operate among the people. And it becomes very difficult to target them. This seems to be the strategy over here, that they kind of engage from, between where commercial aircraft are flying, they launch drones from there, and retaliation becomes extremely difficult because you cannot target an area which is, filled with civilian passenger aircraft. It would be catastrophic, the consequences for that. But, quickly, one more point that the Foreign Secretary made, Akshita, about Pakistan deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure on our side of the border. They shelled a convent, they killed students, they targeted, other members of that convent, and they've targeted gurdwaras as well. And the Foreign Secretary, I have to agree with what he says. He says this is a new law even for Pakistan, targeting civilian infrastructure, targeting places of worship, convents and the like. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them what he described about using civilian aircraft as shields for what they are doing, striking against us, striking at our civilians all across this 3,000-kilometer boundary.
Yeah, and while they constantly continue to do that, mind you, India, in our response also, we've been very measured, and we've ensured that come what may, no matter what level of provocation really Pakistan resorts to, that's where we draw the line. We're not targeting civilian establishments. We're not targeting civilian settlements, come what may. And so despite these kind of provocations, India's been hitting back, countering only by hitting Pakistani military establishment. Just a quick word also from Munish Pandey on the point that was made by the MEA about what's happening along the LOC and the constant shelling come sunset in many parts along the LOC, Munish. That's very, very worrying, the way Pakistan has been resorting to targeting these civilian settlements, most of which now has been evacuated also as a measure now by our forces.
Absolutely, Akshita, and what we saw yesterday in the region of Jammu and nearby areas, that there were constant firing, not only through drones but also artillery firing, heavy shelling from Pakistan side, and it was not only limited to military establishment. It was targeted through civilian civilian areas also, and that is very worrying because there is a line. Whenever there is a war, there is a line. Whenever there is such provocations also, then there is a line. But Pakistan has seen no line, it seems, and that is why they are not only targeting military establishment but also the civilian areas also. Also, one important point, Akshita, is that they sent more than 500 drones last night, and it becomes very difficult for any military establishment, be it any armed forces, to distinguish between those drones and a civilian aircraft. So India has acted very responsibly. Most of those drones were neutralized, but India could have done much better if that civilian aircraft was not in its way. But India has acted very responsibly, and what we have been given to understand is that most of the drones which were sent in the areas like Amritsar, Gurdaspur, Pathankot, those drones were neutralized successfully by the Indian Air Force.
So we managed to repel any attack by Pakistan, and I'll talk about really what India's counter looked like. We'll talk about that in just a bit, but first listen into some of the highlights of what the Foreign Secretary had to say.
The other point in the same vein is Pakistani claims that they did not target or attack any religious places. You would recall that yesterday I shared with you an incident related to the attack on a Gurdwara in Punch. Instead of owning up to these attacks, Pakistan made the preposterous and outrageous claim that it was the Indian Armed Forces and the Indian Air Force that was targeting cities like Amritsar and trying to put the blame on Pakistan. This is nothing but a desperate attempt by Pakistan to disown its acts of aggression, but it is also true to type in its effort to deceive and mislead the world. It will not succeed. The Gurdwara in Punch in particular was attacked by Pakistan, and some local members of the Sikh community, including a Ragi of the Gurdwara, lost their lives in this incident, as I shared yesterday. As we saw in the Pahalgam attack, Pakistan is again trying desperately to impart a communal hue to the situation with an intention to create discord. Again, we are not surprised. India's steadfast unity in itself is a challenge to Pakistan.
And so that's how the Foreign Secretary really exposed Pakistan, their dirty tricks. Quite expected, really, that they're also using civilians as a shield, targeting civilians in India and then using civilians as a shield as well. But let's also put the focus really on one question, the nature of counter that came in from India last night. Gaurav, what really was that about? Do we have any details of what kind of a counter-strike was launched by India last night?
So India has already made it very clear that India will not escalate, but in case there's any action from Pakistan, there will be a response and a definite response. So the response this morning has been taking out an air defense system of Pakistan. Even on day one, after Pakistan attempted to target multiple installations in India, India had taken out the HQ-16 air defense system, and that was in Lahore. This time again in Pakistan's Punjab, an air defense system has been taken down. Perhaps that's the one at the Okara cantonment, and this would indicate that systematically India is degrading Pakistan's war-fighting capabilities. When you take down a country's air defense system, it's not just the radar that's taken down. Often the missiles that come along with it are also either rendered ineffective, or Pakistan becomes night blind or blind in terms of the ability to respond. So India is systematically degrading Pakistan's war-fighting capabilities without escalating.
And by constantly, Sandeep, it seems targeting essentially Pakistan's ability to detect what's coming their way. And when we talk about what's happened in this counter-strike, like Gaurav said, you know, these radars that have been hit, how deep in Pakistan were they?
Oh, well, it wouldn't be deeper than about 50 kilometers, because Lahore is very, just across the border from Amritsar. So what, as Gaurav mentioned, what we seem to be doing is to chip away at their capabilities, degrade their capabilities, target their radars. Radars are very, very critical for air defense systems, because without radars, missiles are useless, guns are useless, they cannot see anything. If you can't see anything, you can't shoot at anything. So that's what India seems to be doing here, targeting radars, targeting air defense radars, because if and when an Indian retaliation comes, again, it's going to be from the air, it's going to be the Air Force, or it's going to be drones. And Pakistan, the fewer radars that Pakistan has, that are operational, the lesser are the chances of it intercepting an Indian airstrike or an Indian drone strike.
Okay, I just want to also right now focus on what's been happening through the last many days, the escalation and the conflict between India and Pakistan. Let's just take a look really at the escalation ladder and where things stand right now. We'll pull out that particular graphic for you and show you where things stand at this point. And there you have it. Essentially, if you look at really the different levels there, at this point, the current state of conflict is at limited battle. Gaurav, what exactly does that mean? And if there's an escalation, let's say tonight, does that mean full-scale war then?
So full-scale war actually would require mobilization of troops on either side, and that troop mobilization hasn't taken place. Of course, India has post-Operation Parakram, or post the attack on the Indian Parliament, where mobilization took about 3 weeks, come up with a new concept called cold start. And cold start meant that you don't have to mobilize your forces, your strike corps. India has one strike corps in Bhopal, another strike corps in Mathura. And by the time they come to the battle area, they form up at battle area, it's already 3 to 4 weeks, and the world doesn't give you time or like that to respond. So then it's too late. And this was as a confidence-building measure with Pakistan. Pakistan has done no confidence-building measures with India. We unilaterally did that in the past. Now with cold start, you have the troops needed for assault already deployed as, integrated battle groups. That means infantry, artillery, armor, engineers, signals, all that is required for battle, to go air defense, to just go into battle as and when required, to the limited VA, VP that you want to capture, the vital asset, vital point, the nodes in the enemy center, and then rest of the army fetches up for you to carry on that campaign. So even that India isn't doing just as yet. If you talk about the escalation ladder, well, Pakistan climbed the escalation ladder when it used terrorists to kill innocents in Pahalgam. We've climbed in terms of responding by taking out their missiles, defense shield. They then tried to respond at multiple civilian and military targets. That's an escalation. If we were to respond similarly, that would be escalation or punitive. We haven't escalated as of now. So that's the situation right now, that India hasn't escalated. And when you look at this escalation ladder...
So we're here right now.
Right now, just a little before limited battle till full-scale war. Because we're not even in limited battle. We're in skirmishes just as yet.
These are skirmishes.
So these are skirmishes, not yet limited battle. Because limited battle would mean extensive engagement. Right now, you're just testing each other.
Do you think so too, Sandeep?
Absolutely.
That we're somewhere between the two and not really at limited battle?
We would be somewhere below this. We would be below limited battle, because that is what Gaurav mentioned. Limited battle would be the cold start doctrine kicking in, shallow strikes, limited ground offensives. So we are somewhere between military preparedness and limited battle. This is what we are doing with our cross-border strikes, what we've done with Operation Sindoor Phase 1 and Phase 2. So that's the situation that we are at right now.
Military preparedness, to me, we seem much about that.
Yes.
It's beyond preparedness now, because you're seeing strikes happening.
So when you're preparing, you're also degrading the enemy before you strike. So you're degrading his war-fighting capabilities. If I may, and Sandeep can bear this out, in war, there's no black and white. There are many areas of grey.
Yeah.
And in these areas of grey, military preparedness is when you're degrading his ability to fight. And Sandeep, weigh in on this with me. You're degrading his ability to fight. Before limited battle, there are skirmishes that go on in several sectors. So limited battle also, before limited battle goes to full-scale war, there are sector-wise. You know, war is science. Even when there is a limited battle that's going on, before it goes to full-scale war, Kargil was a limited battle restricted only to Kargil.
Yeah.
It did not spread beyond, you know, to the Jammu sector. Or if we come, Sandeep, let's explain it on this map. This is the India map. When you had the 1965 and 71 war, you were engaging all along across all sectors. In 1971, you were not only engaging in these sectors, you were also engaging here in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh from all sides. That was then East Pakistan. So 71 war was full-fledged. Assault operations here, holding operations here. That was full scale. Kargil was limited only to this. It did not even escalate from there to Punjab, to Rajasthan, to Gujarat.
But that's the difference from then to now. My point is that right now we're seeing essentially conflict along this entire stretch. So then how do you define that?
Because that conflict is the troop movement. See, when conflict happens, our tanks will be going across, our soldiers will be going across. You know, they would try and come across and we would be destroying them here. So this is where conflict happens, when we have, of course, started bombing them here.
And there are jets here too. So then that's my question, because you've got in Bhuj reports of a strike. You've got reports in Rajasthan as well.
Well, you know, Akshita, the thing is that, as Gaurav was mentioning, that the military has not mobilized fully like they did in 1971 and they did in 2001. When Parakram happened, you had one of the largest deployments of the Indian military since 1971, where you had the Indian military deployed all along the 3,000 kilometer long border and, of course, the LC with Pakistan. You had 3 strike corps positioned there, ready to, you know, strike deep inside Pakistan. Of course, there is the first strike corps came. This is 21 strike corps from Bhopal that was positioned here in Rajasthan. Movement across, all along the border, where they're poised. When the signal is given, all the strike corps move. All 3 strike corps move into Pakistan. They start doing battle with the enemy. So that's a very, very critical component of the land battle, which is when the military, India's military mobilizes fully ready to strike. That hasn't happened yet. So what we are seeing is, we're looking at an alert all across the border. We're looking at skirmishes. You can call them skirmishes, air-to-air skirmishes, long-range missiles being fired, drones being fired. This is, you know, this is the first drone war of India and Pakistan that we are seeing over the last 48 hours or so. So it's actually, we are several rungs away from even a full-scale mobilization of the soldiers.
So what will it take? And I just want to bring it back to this, Gaurav and Sandeep. You know, where right now you're saying somewhere between this. At what step of what Pakistan does do you think it becomes limited battle? The word war has been used a lot right now. And both of you are telling me we can't just use that at this point.
No, because it hasn't reached that stage just as yet. Right now, both sides are testing each other. We are testing them. We are like, at times, poking them to tell them we're degrading your war-fighting capability. They are trying, they're not succeeding. You know, if there are some things, if they've sent in 500 drones, often we are being told that those drones are the cheap Chinese drone without ammunition. So they are making us poof of our very expensive ammunition. Some of them, of course, got thankfully made in India, so we don't have to spend precious foreign exchange. But then we are poofing off. We did poof off quite a bit of ammunition to neutralize the threat. Yesterday, it was essential because we didn't know it could have come in and destroyed any of our civilians. What we could have done, had we wanted to escalate, was then send in similar 500 drones across and targeted them. But they would have seen that as escalation. And we are still giving Pakistan an opportunity. The enemy is not the people of Pakistan. The enemy is that military jihad complex represented by General Asim Munir, Hafiz Muhammad Saeed, that Maulana of terror Masood Azhar, and a lot more. So we want them to be neutralized by the people of Pakistan, if hopefully. If not, we are willing to do that job for them.
And what's been very clear, and this is the message that the MEO also has put out, Mr. Vikram Mistry has said very clearly that our strikes and our response has been non-escalatory, which is why I'm asking at this point, if this were to climb up in the escalation ladder to a limited battle, what's the one provocation or the strike or the attempt that Pakistan makes that will make that scale up, Sandeep?
Well, Akshita, it has to be a very high visibility terror attack of the kind that Pakistan has been carrying out in the last 25 years. It has to be a very large number of civilians that they've killed, like they did, or attack a very symbolic target, like Parliament in 2001, 26/11, Mumbai, it could be another, Pulwama or Pahalgam, a suicide attack, God forbid. If any of these were to happen, that would be considered an escalation, and India would have no option but to mobilize its forces and go in for, moving forces for the cold start option. With the cold start is shallow military strikes, using the ground component, using the land forces, striking across all fronts with Pakistan.
But, if I may, before it even comes to limited battle to full scale, right now what we can also do, and it's very interesting, again, war is science, One, first you have an aim and there is maintenance of aim. If aim is, look at Pakistan, it is such a narrow country. From north to south, within 2 hours you can cover it by air. From here to here, it's very, very narrow. So if you want to squeeze this country, you just start deploying your navy closer here. And this is just 1,000 odd kilometers that you can completely put your ships here, put your ships here, put your ships here, put your ships here, and start live firing exercises. So no oil will come to Karachi, no oil will come to Gwadar. Jiwani, Gwadar, Pasni, Karachi, Ormara, these are the 5 major ports in Pakistan. You blockade him, he will choke to death and surrender without fighting a war.
That will be the final step, is what everyone's saying. If we go ahead and deploy our navy, it's then going ahead and opening a new front against Pakistan.
Absolutely.
And you essentially cripple Pakistan then.
Well, it's already begun. If you look at
it's already begun.
You are seeing exercises.
We are seeing
here,
the Navy being deployed in the North Arabian Sea, because the Navy has issued no times for extensive missile firing exercises all along the North Arabian Sea. And that indicates that if they were missile firing of the ranges that have been shown, that would mean a large number of ships. We are not giving you numbers, but there are a large number of naval warships out there in the North Arabian Sea, even as we speak, ready to open that maritime front if Pakistan chooses to escalate.
So right now, the distance between Indian Navy here and the Pakistan Navy here, they are carrying out their exercises, we are carrying out our exercises, and the difference here is barely 35 nautical miles.
Absolutely.
That's about 70, 80 kilometers at the most.
It's a little over visual range, and all of the fleets are actually parked out there because they're far out at sea. We don't kind of get the visibility. The Navy rarely gets the kind of visibility that it should get, but this is the situation as it's unfolding in the North Arabian Sea.
This is happening right now, even as we speak.
Pakistani warships, Indian warships are exercising right there. They're conducting live missile
So almost
tests.
eyeball to eyeball there too.
In this location, so their attempt is they will
So the
keep
Pakistan
firing
naval
here.
fleet is here.
Yeah, they will keep firing here so that our ships don't go and start attacking Karachi like they did in 1971.
Or even come within missile firing range.
Yeah.
So the idea is to, keep
And
the
we're
Indian Navy
maintaining a
down
certain
south.
distance as
We're
well.
maintaining a distance, but they have asked for, they've issued no times to ensure that we don't come within missile firing range of either Karachi, any of these ports, or even targets in the hinterland. So they've created something like a ADIZ, like the kind that China has created around Taiwan. So air defense identification zone, by issuing these no times, saying that, listen, we are firing over here, so everyone stay out. All warships, all merchant ships, all aircraft stay out of this area because we are firing missiles.
But that also starts bleeding Pakistan already, because insurance costs will go up. If there are live firing missile exercises happening, no civilian ship will go to Karachi to refuel. No food, fuel, any of those resources will come in via ship, and Pakistan anyway will be in trouble.
So India's holding back here. Like you said, we're here right now.
Yep.
What stops us from going ahead and escalating it here?
When we want to, I'm sure we can.
That's an option that India retains.
But it will be the last resort.
It will be one of the final resorts. If we were to go out for an all-out shooting war, the Navy would definitely join in the action.
Okay, so what we're seeing right now is, as Gaurav and Sandeep put it, not even a limited battle, just below that. And hopefully it doesn't escalate into a limited battle. That, of course, it's up to Pakistan completely to decide. But I want you to take a look at our next report. We've done a very interesting comparison of the Pakistan Army's tactics. And I'm sure Sandeep and Gaurav would like to pitch in on that right after this report, on how the strikes, the failed strikes that we saw last night, very, very similar to how essentially Hamas tried to strike Israel. Take a look at this report and then we'll talk about that in a bit.
Pakistani attacks thwarted again. Its plot to bleed civilian areas with drones and crude missiles foiled again. But the repeated attacks by Pakistan at multiple locations has a pattern, using chilling modus operandi of a terrorist organization. This style has been copied from Hamas. Short-range, locally assembled rockets were launched by Pakistan in quick succession to target dense civilian areas, a chapter exactly copied from Hamas' playbook. Pakistan, just like Hamas, aimed to exhaust Indian air defense system with multiple projectiles. But just like Israel's Iron Dome, India's S-400 air defense system repelled the nefarious attempt.
The Hamas attack on Israel seems to have inspired Pakistan. First the attack in Pahalgam and then targeting of civilians. This is a very clear imprint. Secondly is about how targeting of civilians, especially living in line of control, a style adopted by Hamas, targeting innocent civilians. Then thereafter, what we know is the meeting of masterminds, especially Hamas leaders meeting not just top Lashkar commanders, but terrorists right in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Something Pakistan has supported all along are not just terror launchpad, but big terror organizations and are being safe havens there. But effectively handled well and fended off at line of control and in hinterland by Indian forces.
Pakistan had recently hosted Hamas terrorists at Jaish headquarters Bahawalpur, which has now been reduced to rubble. It has been primary haven of terrorists and its role is in multiple terror strikes across the world. Is Pakistan's rogue army now directly copying activities of terror groups? Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, so let's talk about those images. Let's put out a direct comparison, and I want Gaurav and Sandeep to weigh in on this. This is Israel being targeted by Hamas. So you see the images very similar, essentially, to what we saw last night. And that's because essentially a barrage of rockets fired at India and all of it intercepted by a rather robust air defense system. Gaurav, you were there. Yep. You were there in Israel when this was happening. And when you saw the images last night, was it a sense of deja vu? Because it seems to be the exact same strategy to me.
Oh, absolutely. And what Hamas does, it uses those very cheap rockets, often, pipeline that's used for water. Those GI pipes, they are used, explosives are filled, there's a charge filled in it, fins attached, a cone attached and launched. It's almost like a country-made mortar. Absolutely. So that's what the Hamas terrorists do, and they fire a barrage, zook, 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 in quick succession. And Israel has to fire very expensive Iron Dome missiles. So, these rockets that cost a couple of $100, just a couple of $100, and an Iron Dome missile which costs many thousands of dollars, which is millions of dollars that's going in. That is how Hamas was able to bleed Israel. And Israel is a rich country. Yeah. India is a developing country. So there, Pakistan is trying exactly the same textbook, making us spend expensive, either the S-400 systems, which is very expensive, 39,000 crore rupees for 5 systems, or fortunately, we have the Made in India Akash. Yes. So when that system fires back and neutralizes the threat, that's a defensive mechanism. You also need to be offensive. Through your weapon locating radars, triangulate the place where that fire is coming from and fire back immediately, destroy those threats. At source, what you did in Muridke, what you did in Balakot, what you did in Bahawalpur is the only way to punish Pakistan's state-sponsored radical Islamist terror.
So isn't it, Sandeep? If we're seeing this as a strategy, as Gaurav put it, Sandeep, to kind of ensure that we keep using our air defense system and so therefore ensure that you cripple us in that way, do you think that in the next few days, then Pakistan is going to continue this of firing rockets non-stop?
Absolutely. Either that or drones. This seems to be their playbook, that they want to swarm our air defense system with cheap drones. And we've seen drones of all varieties being used.
So
if
it's
you
not
heard
costing
the MEA
Pakistan anything?
It doesn't cost them as much, but as the MEA spokesperson said, they've used everything from Turkish drones, which are top-of-the-line equipment, right down to the kind of drones that we saw that are used, the Chinese DJI Mavic kind of drones, a small quadcopter kind of drone. So they're using everything to swamp our AD systems, to light up our AD systems, to target our AD systems, and also, as Gaurav mentioned, to force us to poof off ammunition so that we run out of ammunition and they can kind of attack.
Then how
they
do
carry
you
out the real
counter
attack.
that though then? Because
Hit
we
them at
have to
source.
protect.
Hit them at source. Look, India's always been restrained. I covered the Kargil war, so did Sandy in 1999. Every time India has been very restrained. Kargil, then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee did not order the Air Force, to cross the LC and hit terror at source or hit Pakistan Army at source. The Narendra Modi government is very different. They ordered the Air Force to go hit Balakot and hit terror through missiles at source. You need to do that. That's the only way. Instead of you bleeding, the enemy must bleed. If he bleeds harder, he's a poor country. He cannot sustain it. Bleed him till he stops using terror as an instrument of state policy.
The current approach of India, would you call it restraint? Because there has been talk that, we're being non-escalatory. We are responding, essentially, to Pakistan. They hit us, we hit them back.
Absolutely.
So do you think we're still being restrained?
We are still very restrained, especially in the face of very grave provocation. If you take the Foreign Secretary's words, he said that, they've hit new lows in the battle that the Pakistanis are fighting because they are targeting civilians, they're targeting places of worship, they're targeting temples, they're targeting gurudwaras, and they're targeting convents.
Convents as well.
This is, so, literally, as I was telling Gaurav earlier, the mask seems to have fallen off the Pakistan military. There is no distinction between the Pakistan military now and the terrorists that they rear. And that we saw in full evidence when you saw that state funeral for a terrorist with a coffin wrapped in the Pakistan flag. Unprecedented event.
And the chief of the army staff laying a wreath. Can you imagine Pakistan army chief and the corps commander present there at the funeral and laying a wreath and army men in uniform standing there for the namaz-e-janaza of a terrorist? That just shows they're brothers in arms.
Do you see then that the next step would also be trying to get terrorists to infiltrate through, trying to carry out terror strikes at the same time that the army is firing these rockets?
It happened this morning. 7 terrorists of Jaish-e-Mohammed were killed trying to infiltrate in the Samba sector. And, the tragedy is that Pakistan, costs need to be imposed. The manner in which Government of India is doing right now, reaching out to the International Monetary Fund.
Correct.
Don't give them the next tranche of the $2 billion that they require. If they have no money, they can't wage a terror war against India. So that is where the world needs to unite. But, it's a long-drawn battle. Look at Israel. Israel continues to gather international opinion. The world, to a very large extent, until October 7, was siding with Hamas, and many still continue to do so. Similarly, there are countries that are siding with Pakistan, despite it being a radical Islamist state sponsor of terror.
Is that disappointing, though, that we haven't, despite seeing the manner of strikes that have been happening and the clear evidence written all through which we've been discussing of how, there's this clear tango of the Pakistan army and terrorism, that there hasn't been a strong response, really, that's come in right now from the international community. Everyone's talking of de-escalate rather than calling out Pakistan. Do you think that's disappointing in a sense?
It is disappointing in a sense, Akshita. But, the fact is that as Gaurav and me, we've been covering terrorism for more than 25 years. And this has been the playbook all along. It is your terrorism versus our terrorism. They condemn terrorism only when it affects them in Europe and in America, not in when it affects us, in the way people were killed in Mumbai, for instance. And that was the first time, incidentally, that the world woke up to global terrorism because foreigners were deliberately targeted.
Correct.
They asked them for their passports, and depending on their nationalities, they were gunned down. If they were Americans, they were shot in the head. If they're Singaporeans, they were shot in the head. And interestingly, if they were Turkish, they were allowed to go away scot-free. So this is the kind of targeted killings that Pakistan's state-sponsored terror machinery has been doing over several decades. So this is the short answer to what you asked me, Akshita, is this is our battle to fight. There is no point in us looking for international support. There will be support to a certain extent, but finally, if you have to go in and defang the terrorists and the terror factories, we will have to do it ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
The profiling and killing, exactly what happened in Pahalgam as well, where instead they started targeting people based on their religion.
Look at Daniel Pearl. He was a Jewish journalist working in Pakistan. I mean, he took a grave risk, but that's what journalists do all the time. They report the story. Omar Saeed Sheikh, he lured him, took him out, and then made him go down on his knees and then slit his throat because he was Jewish. So he killed him because of his religion.
Well, he beheaded him as well.
Beheaded
And they
him.
filmed the act. They
Yes.
filmed the act and then they broadcast that video to show that they had, murdered a Jewish person.
And despite all of this, you still don't see that kind of global solidarity that perhaps there should be against Pakistan. Put that pressure on them and make them answer for it so that they're forced to go ahead and also stop breeding this kind of terror. Gaurav, Sandeep, thank you very much for joining me here in the studios. I know it's been a long day, a long 24 hours for them, and they continue their marathon coverage in some time from now. But thank you for joining me. I'll bring in Kamaljeet Sandhu also on this broadcast for the latest updates, and focusing particularly on the point that the MEA made, which is a big expose of what Pakistan really stands for, Kamaljeet, which is of how civilian aircraft was going around exactly at the time when Pakistan was firing those drones and missiles at us.
Well, absolutely. The sinister design of Pakistan is very well exposed now. And remember, even though they have claimed deniability and need role, but that's the old tactics as far as Pakistan is concerned. There are safe havens of terror organization, be it Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, and even Osama bin Laden being found in Pakistan. So all this really points out towards how the Pakistan ISI, the Pakistan Army, one, they have indulged in low intensity conflict for past 3 decades. But remember, as far as the government is concerned, they have had a threshold, and that is why what we've seen is there are ramifications, be it Uri attack, Pulwama attack, and now the Pahalgam attack, which has taken place with terror organization with its imprints in Pakistan, launching cross-border terror attacks. So in that particular sense, what is also seen is the Hamas-style attack, where how Hamas in October 2023 had attacked Israeli parts, both launching civilian as well as military strikes. But here also what we see is that the civilians are being targeted, not just in Pahalgam, but across line of control and international border, where what we've seen is heavy artillery fire. We've also seen the magnitude with which the Pakistani army has launched and surveillance drones being sent. But remember, as far as India is concerned, which is superior in terms of military might in every senses, there has been thwarting and neutralizing of all these threats coming from across the border.
No, we've been very measured in our response. That's very clear at this point, because even as you've been seeing these constant strikes by Pakistan, we've hit back in our counter one of their radars. And therefore, we continue to maintain we will not target civilian establishments. The IAF, as the MEA also told us, has shown great restraint last night when Pakistan was resorting to the strikes because of the civilian aircraft that was hovering around in that particular area. Kamalji, thanks very much for joining us with those details. I was referring earlier to the fact that there seems to be a lack of global solidarity and messaging to Pakistan. Today, in just about 1 hour from now, at 7:30 Indian Standard Time, is when the International Monetary Fund will take a decision on whether they're going to be giving the bailout package to Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, has been in financial doldrums. The economy is a mess, and they've been seeking money from the IMF. They want a big, fat loan. Pakistan is facing a perfect storm of financial collapse and rising tensions with India, which is why they need it more than ever. India has been pushing, saying do not give a country that harbors terrorists a bailout package.
It was pure chaos on the streets of Lahore Thursday morning. Sirens went off and people ran out of their homes as a series of loud explosions were heard in the city. The incident comes just a day after Operation Sindoor destroyed terror pads in Pakistan and the POK. And reports trickle in of a swarm drone attack on Lahore's air defense systems. Clearly, Pakistan's confidence is shaken. For the first time in several years, trading was suspended at the Karachi Stock Exchange after the KSE 30 index plunged more than 7% in trade today. Investors are feeling the pain as well. The Karachi Stock Exchange was at 36,403 at its close on 22nd of April, the day of the Pahalgam massacre. By 6th of May, it had fallen 5%. Operation Sindoor led to a bloodbath on KSE, with the index falling more than 6% in intraday trade. Finally, it closed with a fall of 3%. Today again, the sell-off was deeper, with the index plunging nearly 9% in trade. Pakistan's fragile economy is ill-equipped to face any hostilities with India. Investors started selling stocks immediately after Pahalgam attacks, and for the first time in the past few years, trading was suspended. Pakistan is staring into a financial abyss. With foreign reserves of barely $15 billion and a balance of payments, crisis looming, all eyes are now on the 9th of May, meeting of the IMF, where its executive board will decide whether to approve a crucial $1.3 billion tranche as part of a broader $7 billion bailout. Pakistan's key economic indicators continue to flash red. Its GDP growth is expected at just 2.6% this year. Its inflation is above 5%, hurting household budgets. Its public debt is more than 80% of the GDP, and the Pakistani rupee remains under severe pressure, and imports continue to outpace earnings. And now, in the backdrop of the Pahalgam massacre, India is pushing back diplomatically. India has formally urged the IMF to reconsider funding to Pakistan, citing risks that the funds may be diverted or misused. The message, aid without accountability, may worsen regional instability. At the heart of India's concern is Pakistan's disproportionate defense spending. In 2024-2025, nearly 17.5% of Pakistan's budget, over 2 lakh crore rupees, was allocated to defense, while only a fraction went to health and education. Pakistan also spends more on interest payments than on development, with nearly half of its revenue consumed by debt servicing. The IMF faces a dilemma. While it recognizes Pakistan's economic fragility and wants to avoid default, there's rising pressure to ensure transparency and fiscal discipline. The 9th of May vote will also consider whether Pakistan has met reform benchmarks tied to energy, pricing, taxation, and anti-corruption mechanisms. For Pakistan's 24 crore people, this isn't just about geopolitics. It is about survival. A stalled IMF deal could send inflation soaring and sink the rupee further, triggering a wider humanitarian crisis. But as war clouds linger over the subcontinent, the world's financial institutions now face a tough call. Can they support Pakistan's economy without funding instability? The IMF decision will not just decide Pakistan's economic fate, it may shape South Asia's security calculus for years to come. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
Let's get you big breaking news that's coming in from Delhi, where the 3 service chiefs are meeting with Prime Minister Modi. This is the big breaking news that's coming in right now. The meeting is happening at the Prime Minister's residence, and keeping in mind all that's been happening along the border, you are essentially seeing this meeting perhaps as a briefing also of what's taking place right now. Remember that the 3 service chiefs had met earlier with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, also with the Chief of Defence Staff. That was a briefing that took place in the morning. Now, the 3 service chiefs, the tri-service chiefs, also meeting with Prime Minister Modi, and all that's been happening really with Pakistan and the conflict, the strikes versus the counter-strikes that have been taking place. Our forces have been doing a tremendous job of repelling, of thwarting every attempt by Pakistan to target military establishments, to target civilian establishments. All of that has been repelled. And so now our forces are also briefing the Prime Minister on exactly what's the situation currently and the next course of action. Let me bring in Aishwarya Paliwal for more details on this. Aishwarya, that meeting currently underway. You had the 3 service chiefs meeting with the Defence Minister earlier and now with the Prime Minister.
Well, you know, a very crucial meeting, let me tell you, Akshita, and that's the spot where I'm standing. I'm standing right outside Prime Minister Narendra Modi's house. And what we are seeing now, the chief of the three defense forces, all of them have just gone inside. They will now tell Prime Minister Narendra Modi what exactly has transpired. In fact, let me tell you, Prime Minister Modi has been given every information over the past 24 hours, what exactly transpired. We even heard in the briefing there, every detail has now been given out, what to do next, what all preparations need to be done. And Prime Minister will be told about it by the three chiefs. All of them just barely a couple of minutes ago went inside. A very crucial meeting will take place. From what I can tell you, Akshita, the meeting will go on for at least an hour. Prime Minister Modi will be briefed about what has been done so far and what next needs to be done, the kind of preparation that we will see, the chart for that, the planning for that will be done in the next 1 hour.
Okay, we'll track all the big takeaways of that particular meeting. But so far, the message from the government and the Prime Minister has been full freedom to our forces to retaliate in the manner they deem fit, when, where, how, all of that, full freedom to our forces. We'll track that very closely. Let's cut across to more breaking news coming in. Another day that Pakistan again has resorted to ceasefire violations, opening fire along the LOC, and once again, it's the worst hit area of Poonch that is seeing heavy shelling being reported by the Pakistan Army. We also understand in Uri is where we're seeing ceasefire violations being reported. At this point, remember, in Uri and Poonch, where the civilian settlements are, is where we're seeing maximum shelling by the Pakistan Army. They intend to target civilian settlements. They want to target innocents. And we've been seeing this since April 22nd, since the Pahalgam terror attack. We'll get you a report also right now. What's the situation there? But heavy shelling has already begun, with Pakistan resorting to ceasefire violations. This has been essentially what they've been doing for the last many weeks. And unfortunately, as a result of them firing and also resorting to shelling in villages in Poonch and Uri along the LOC, we've been seeing maximum civilian casualties, the death toll at 15 plus now, just from the last few weeks. There are children, senior citizens, all of whom have been affected. There are many pockets here along the LOC where our forces have also ensured full evacuation, because it's no longer safe for these civilians to be based in these areas, with Pakistan clearly doing whatever it takes to target civilians along the entire border. So while we are reporting right now on the situation along the line of control, we can confirm for you that heavy shelling has been reported in Uri. Now, every single day, we've been seeing these kind of provocations by Pakistan, the Pakistan Army resorting to shelling as soon as the sun goes down. And now in Uri, there's been confirmation that there's been shelling being reported in this entire stretch as well, in the villages in Uri particularly. All right, let's move on and talk about how the political tensions between India and Pakistan has also compelled the BCCI to go ahead and take the step of suspending the IPL, putting the brakes on cricket's richest leagues, the Indian Premier League, for a week. Now, next week, we'll know exactly whether the IPL will resume or not. But the message is very clear. The BCCI says that at such a sensitive time, we can't be playing cricket. More details coming up.
देखिए बीसीसीआई ने यह निर्णय लिया है कि आईपीएल को अभी फिलहाल 1 सप्ताह के लिए स्थगित किया गया है। उसके बाद जो स्थिति है उसका जायजा लेके सरकार से विचार विमर्श करके जो हमारे स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं, फ्रेंचाइजी और ब्रॉडकास्टर, इन सबसे बात करके नए शेड्यूल की घोषणा की जाएगी।
इस वक्त आईपीएल चल रही थी और काफ़ी अच्छी चल रही थी, बहुत सारी प्रतिभा जो है उभर के आ रही थी, लेकिन अचानक बंद हो गया है। तो आप भी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में थे, कितना इमरजेंसी ये रहता है ऐसा?
आज जो मैंने वो देखा है प्रेस रिलीज की 7 दिन के लिए सस्पेंडेड हुआ है, तो बीसीसीआई ज़रूर इसको कंप्लीट करेगा। कोविड के समय 2021-20 में जब इतना प्रॉब्लम था तभी भी आईपीएल कंप्लीट हुआ था। बीसीसीआई इतनी एफिशिएंट है कि ये ज़रूर कंप्लीट करेंगे। 7 दिन का ब्रेक है, 7 दिन एक्सटेंड भी हो जाएगा टूर्नामेंट।
तब आप थे, हम लोग जानते हैं कोविड के टाइम में इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन आप देखे हो, तो इसको कैसे टैकल किया जाता है या आपका क्या सलाह रहेगी?
कोविड जैसा सिचुएशन हो ही नहीं सकता। और कोविड में मैचेस हुए हैं और इंडियन गवर्नमेंट मिनिस्ट्री जैसे इंस्ट्रक्शन देगी, बीसीसीआई उसी हिसाब से काम करेगा।
And meanwhile, in another massive setback for Pakistan, remember that the PSL was called off because of the conflict between India and Pakistan, but they wanted to actually shift this out of Pakistan and to UAE. What we're hearing from our sources is that the UAE is likely to reject Pakistan's plea to host the PSL there. Pakistan had sought that Dubai be the venue for PSL, but sources telling us that the UAE is likely to shut the door on the Pakistan Cricket Board's plan of hosting PSL in Dubai. Another setback for Pakistan. It really shows you what their standing is right now in the world order. The fact that UAE has also chosen to dismiss their plea for the PSL to be held in Dubai. That's all we have time for in this edition of Super 6. On the